Dutchman Mike Velthuijzen won his third successive European Supermono Championship this year. We spoke with him about his season. And it wasn't an easy season, says Mike Velthuijzen. Not just because of the competition, because competition is great, of course, to have good teams around you and good competitors. But unfortunately, the weather in the Netherlands wasn't very good. That's why most of our tests, as well in the Netherlands as in other countries, most of the tests were wet, and that was difficult for us. The first race of the European Supermono Championship was in Snetterton in Great Britain, a wet practice. And I'm, this year, says Mike, I'm also a test rider for in-track suspension, and because of the fact that it was raining a lot, the base setting in the wet was good, but unfortunately the base setting on a dry track, that was difficult. And I had to battle with the young Austrian rider Lucas Wimmer. We had a great battle, the two of us. I was leading the race, he was close behind me, and we diced a lot. But unfortunately there was some oil on the track due to a crash in the sidecar race just before us, and I almost crashed. I managed to save my almost crash, my near crash, but I broke a bone in my foot. But I was lucky to start that second race of the season as well in Snetterton, the day after that first race. And I managed to win that race despite the injury, and I was first in the championship from the first weekend on. The second race was in Austria on the Red Bull Ring, so that was Lucas Wimmer's home track. That's a really fast track, and that's something that suits me well. There was a lot of dicing for the lead as well. But this time it was Lucas Wimmer who won the first race. The second race in that same weekend, a lot of battling going on with Lucas Wimmer. But then it started to rain about 3 laps before the race should have finished. No red flag, so we decided to go for it. But I crashed. Fortunately for me, I wasn't the only one to crash, because Lucas crashed as well behind me, and so did the number 3. And practically all the riders went down. And because of that, I was given the win. I was the last guy to cross the line as the leader in the race, so I was a bit lucky with that. And after the Red Bull Ring, we went to Germany, to the Oschersleben track. Great track for me as well. Great track for supermonos from 450 to 800 cc's. Qualification went well for me. I managed to claim pole position. And Lucas Wimmer was having some problems during practice, technical problems, and that's why he had to start from the back. But when we came to the track, when we came to the grid, we had to wait a long time before the race started. Then something went wrong with my bike, and I had two options: either to race and see whether we could finish, or maybe just stay behind and get into the pits. That's not what I did. I did race, and unfortunately it wasn't a good race for me, but I did finish the race. I finished in 11th position, and I got some valuable points, 5 points, and at that moment I thought they could be decisive for the European Championship. The last race was held, the last race weekend was held in Assen. I started from pole. Dutchman Jerry van der Bunt could also clinch the European title, so it was between the three of us, Lucas Wimmer, Jerry van der Bunt and myself. So whoever would win the race would also win the European Championship, says Mike Velthuijzen. The first race was great. I managed to win the race. So my lead in the championship was a little bit bigger. And the second race, if I would finish in third position, that would be enough for me. Lucas Wimmer started the second race from second position. I was on pole and Jerry van der Bunt was fourth. And Lucas Wimmer was behind me after the start. And he knew that he had to win the race. He did everything he could. He was very, very fast. And it was cold again. And I didn't want to take too many risks. And I was trying to follow him. And he was taking every risk he should. But unfortunately, he went down. And I was lucky to stay on the bike. And it looked like I could win the race, but there was a stone, just a little stone, into my radiator, and I had some leakage. But I did manage to finish the race in second position behind Jerry van der Bunt, and my second position was enough for the European Championship. Really difficult season. Some big crashes as well, with a lot of damage done to the bike. But I'm, of course, very happy to clinch that third title. Like Mike said, he is a test rider for Intrex suspension. It was a sort of an experimental year for him, but like we said earlier on, because of bad weather conditions in the Netherlands, it was really difficult to get a good setting for a dry setup. So it was difficult, says Mike, to get a good package for the race. It wasn't bad, says Mike. I think we still are safe to say that the bike that we have is the best bike of the whole field. The package is good, but the competition from Jerry van der Bunt and Lucas Wimmer was really, really tough. This is my 5th year, says Mike, in the European Championship. The first 2 years I finished as a runner-up, and 3 years after that I clinched the title. Also won the Dutch Supermono title this year. But because of that, there's some riders who decide not to start in our class because they think I am, well, maybe a bit too strong for the class, and maybe I could take it easy for season 2015 and mainly focus on tests. I work for myself, I work in engineering for myself as well, and the things that I do while testing the racer could help me as in my company as well, says Mike.
Nou ja, wat ik al zei, we zijn al een aardig tijdje bezig en om je een idee te geven, het is... Ja, wij zijn geen full professional.
Mike says I'm not a full professional, full-time professional. And everybody thinks, well, a lot of people think that I'm a professional. That's not true. We're still looking for sponsors, trying to find sponsors and financial, not really financial gain, but of course financial sponsors who could help us. We've got 2 mechanics, and I work as many hours as I can on the project, and we work about more than 30 hours a week during the season on this project, and that's a lot of time spent on this European Supermono Championship, says Mike. We're not just racing, we're also trying to develop the bike. And our package is really good. And let's have a closer look at the bike then. Almost 800 cc, says Mike, 762 cc's.
Ik zal even kort uitleggen wat het Supermono verhaal inhoudt. Supermono is een klasse georganiseerd door de ESA,
and the European Supermono Association organizes this championship for the FIM, and every monocylinder bike from 450 to 800 cc can take part in the championship. But it isn't necessarily true that an 800 cc bike is always faster than a 450. There's quite a few riders who take a 450 engine from a motocross bike tune the engine, and they are sometimes extremely competitive. As far as the chassis is concerned, some riders use a 125 chassis, a Honda chassis, but I use a 250 Ford Grand Prix chassis. And of course we modified the chassis, we made the tank ourselves, and the exhaust system is something that we developed by myself from titanium and carbon. Extremely light, and that's important as well. The wheels are very light. The monocoque frame here, the seat is monocoque, just not the seat but also the airbox incorporated in that. Everything is custom made when it comes to the footrests. Let's have a look what's under the tank. We are one of the very few riders and teams who use carburetors, says Mike. A lot of teams use injection, and we are crazy about injection as well, but this is the way that we find the most horsepower for this bike. A closer look at the tank. Homemade by Mike and his team. You can start Supermono racing from 14 years old onwards, says Mike. Like in the Moriwaki Cup, and also riders from the Moriwaki Cup with a 125 chassis and a 250 or a 450 engine in it, but also somebody like Josef Frauenschuh from Austria. He works for KTM and he uses a KTM engine. But there's also riders with a 690 KTM in the Czech Republic. Teams have their own homemade engines, and the only limits are 800cc and no turbos. So that's all about Supermono riding.